I know from experience that anxiety disorder sufferers want relief, just fast relief, simple instruction that will lead them directly to complete elimination from their anxiety, from their phobias, from their obsessions, from their compulsions, to the things that set them up every day to risk assess, analyze, and cower away, frightened of pretty much everything. I know how that feels because I had it too. For 22 years, I suffered from OCD, panic disorder, agoraphobia, emetophobia, health anxiety, eating disorders. It was overwhelming. So I know from experience that all a sufferer wants of any age is to wake up in the morning and not feel anxious, and know that the day is going to be anxiety free, and that they can focus on their life without having to consider fear, anxiety, phobias, compulsions. Most anxious clients say to me, Charles, when am I going to recover? When is it actually going to happen? And the problem is that we've been set up by society to understand that psychological issues such as anxiety take weeks, months, years to overcome, if at all, and that they require medication, psychology, psychiatry, analysis, and deep psychological intervention, searching, identification of cause, assigning blame to the cause, and then a long process of addressing those issues over time to bring anxiety back down to normal levels of emotional response. And the experience of most people with anxiety conditions is that despite all these interventions, nothing works. They stay the same, sometimes indefinitely. Over the last 24 years, so since 1997 when I started Linden Tree Education, we've helped tens of millions of people to understand and come to terms with the fact that they can overcome their anxiety disorder quickly. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people, led them to fast recovery, using evidence-based, science-based, logical, and simple techniques that remove disorder from the mind. And that's all you want, isn't it? All you want is to be able to flick a switch. So when people say to me, Charles, how long is it going to take? It's a very simple question to answer. It should take this long. How long will it take in you? That's dependent on one factor: how quickly you get the correct data to your subconscious mind. Because your subconscious mind, is constantly collecting environmental data. It's collecting data through your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your skin, your data collectors that we commonly call the senses. That information goes back to your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind then decides how to respond, if at all. Now, in the case of fear, of course, it responds with what we commonly call fight or flight, what I could call the fear response. Anxiety isn't fear. They didn't name it twice for fun. Fear is fear. It's the human emotion that keeps us safe. Anxiety is the disordered version of that emotion. You don't need to suffer from anxiety. Nobody does. Regardless of age, regardless of how long they've suffered, what they've tried before, regardless of the medication they take, regardless of their lifestyles, regardless of their actual physical health. Irrelevant. Anxiety is disordered fear. You get rid of the disorder, you get rid of the fear. It's that simple. And is this my theory? No, this is simple human biology. This is the human biology that we're taught at school, but we choose to forget after we leave school. If we applied the simple understanding of science, of human biology, of our own bodies, that we learn in school to the rest of our lives, we would stay relatively ordered and we wouldn't necessarily fall into disorder. If you have the knowledge that you need, if you understand the way your body and mind works together, and the way that intersystemically all of those systems of your body work together in synergy to create health and well-being, if you understand that simple notion, that simple science, you can move from anxious to non-anxious fast. But no other practice that you will have tried, be it psychology, counseling, psychotherapy, psychiatry, EFT, NLP, EMDR, DBT, any of the cognitive-based talking therapies, they don't use this science. And when I say this to people at the retreats, they say, why, Charles? Why on earth don't they use this science? Because it's the simple science. Now, I've had doctors of psychology, I've had psychiatrists, psychotherapists, I've had psychologists from every branch of psychology. I've had ists from every branch of medicine at those retreats over the last 12 years now. And they have all confirmed that the science of emotional response, and therefore the science of recovery, is true. And they sit there bewildered, mostly, when they hear how to recover from their own anxiety conditions. Now, these are people that work in medical and mental organizations. They have ists all around them, the people who claim to be able to help. But the people themselves that provide these services are suffering. What does that tell you? If they can't cure themselves, who could they cure? And this is the notion that suddenly arises in people's minds when they sit at the retreat. They suddenly say, but Charles, this doesn't make sense. I know this. I learnt it at medical school. I learnt it through school, through education. But I was asked to forget it in order to practice these things that can't work. And I now know that they can't work. The frustration, I think, for any sufferer, and for me, because of course I suffered all the way through till I was 26, as an adult sufferer, I could look back on my childhood and really understand what it was that had been done to me, said to me, how I'd been manipulated through that experience, and how I was never going to recover from any of those interventions. Nobody is. Because ultimately, the problem is that this core science isn't addressed. And so if you're going to weekly sessions, as I was as a young person, if you're taking medication, if you're taking the advice of people about sleep and relaxation and flooding and exposure therapy and tapping yourself and relaxing and being hypnotized and meditating, if that's what you're doing, you're not doing with your human body, the body that matches everybody else's body on the planet, what is required in order to create the desired effect. And the problem is, it's like trying to get fit. You can go to a gym and sit there and listen to your music and watch other people exercise. You can't absorb fitness. It has to be done. It has to be carried out physically for it to work. And therein lies the issue. The things that you're being told to do, the things that you are doing, the things that you commonly hear will help, will not. If you're rating your anxiety, setting time aside to be anxious, if you're writing anxiety diaries, if you're concentrating on your breathing, if you're relaxing, if you're meditating, if you're doing mindfulness, if you're talking about your anxiety, if you're talking about your symptoms, if you're looking for reassurance, these are all ways to practice being anxious. You will not recover whilst you do those things. Fact. That's not my fact. That's just basic human biology. The science of evolution, the science of the human body, the science of not just suffering, but also recovery. So if you want to do today what does flick that switch, you need to listen to people that know how to achieve that. Recovered people, people that have experience many thousands of times, producing that same effect in many thousands of people. So again, back to the core question, how long does it take to recover? You can recover that quickly. That's the truth of it. The physiological, neurological truth, the scientific truth, the human truth of your disorder, regardless of how it affects you and how long you've suffered and how you feel. The truth is that you can switch it off that quickly. Will you? Statistically, probably not. Does it happen? I've seen it happen many, many hundreds of times in front of my eyes, believe me. So it can happen, but will it happen for you? Possibly not. Statistically, it's not going to happen in a second. It may not happen in a minute. It may not happen in an hour. It may not happen in a day, a week, or a month. It is entirely dependent on whether you get the correct messages to your subconscious mind. But when you do, it will happen. It happened for me. It was like, my HOCD, my panic disorder, my agoraphobia, my monophobia was there one day, and genuinely, after 22 years, it was gone the next. Genuinely. I see it all the time in the retreats. I see it in private practice. I see it in our clients constantly. But it doesn't happen that quickly for everybody, but it can. And that's the thing you have to focus on. Not how long it's going to take, the fact that it is now going to happen. Because you're doing the one thing that your body and brain require in order to make it happen. Everything else has just been a distraction to you. It hasn't been addressing the core issue. So if you want recovery, just listen to the instruction, do as instructed, and your body and mind will follow. I absolutely promise you. If you want more information, click on the link below this video. Talk to our recovery team. They're all qualified psychologists and psychotherapists. They all practice anxiety recovery. They've all suffered. They've all helped thousands of people to find fast and lifelong recovery. Linden Tree Education is the oldest provider of online mental health services, recovery-focused mental health services. We run anxiety recovery retreats. We've done that for nearly just coming up to 12 years. People come from all over the world to come to those. That you can find that at anxietyrecoveryretreat.com. If you find that and have a look down the pages, you'll see a handful of the thousands of testimonials of recovery that we've produced in those retreats and also through our online and workshop programs. And now, uniquely, you can get our advice directly. Because of what's happened in the world recently, we've started working remotely, which means that we can now do live interactive webinars that you can join as part of the program structure. They're included in the program structure. You get the full recovery program, you get access to our team, and you get these live interactive sessions now where you can ask any question and get quick answers from home. You don't have to leave home to do this. It's very easy. It's all about structure. It's all about compliance. But it's so much fun. You feel the changes happening. And that is what is so compelling about this, is that you can actually, from second one, when you start, you feel your anxiety starting to reduce because you start to understand that you will be recovered. So follow the link below, ask any questions that you've got, and we'll be glad to help you. Take care. Bye-bye.